Good evening and welcome to tonight's special edition of Big Story. The world is on the brink of a major trade war, with the United States imposing tariffs on China, Canada and Mexico. President Trump has even threatened the European Union, leaving many to wonder, could India be next in the line? As tensions rise, questions loom over how India will navigate this growing crisis. Will the United States target India, given its trade surplus and the ongoing concerns over tariffs? And what could this mean for India's economy and global trade relations? This is our today's big story. In tonight's program, we'll explore these critical questions, dive into the complex dynamics of this escalating world trade war. With the United States ramping up protectionist measures, how will India respond, and how might this affect the future of its ties with the United States? Stay with us as we examine the potential fallout and what it means for India and the global economy moving forward.
Sparked by US President Donald Trump's decision to impose 10% tariffs on imports from China, Canada, and Mexico. These tariffs have led to retaliatory actions from the affected countries, creating uncertainty in trade relations. Trump's tough stance against perceived trade imbalances has not only targeted these nations but also extended to the European Union, with similar tariff threats. The escalating tensions have sent shockwaves through global markets, and nations are scrambling to respond. The world is witnessing the onset of a global trade war, sparked by US President Donald Trump's decision to impose 10% tariffs on imports from China, Canada, and Mexico. These tariffs have set off a series of retaliatory actions from the affected countries, creating uncertainty in international trade relations. Trump's aggressive trade policies have also targeted the European Union, further escalating tensions on the global storm. Trump's trade war is intensifying, and India's economic position is at risk. While India has not yet faced US tariffs, concerns are growing that India could be targeted, particularly given its trade surplus with the US. With the US pushing for greater market access and demanding changes to India's trade policies, tensions between the two countries are rising. India's growing role as a global economic player could put it in the crosshairs of US protectionism, threatening its booming trade relations and future growth prospects. In an effort to address these concerns, India has made several policy adjustments, including the removal of tariffs on goods in the Indian budget. This move is seen as a signal to the US and other global trading partners, demonstrating India's willingness to adapt to shifting trade dynamics. However, it remains unclear whether these actions will be enough to appease the US. India must now carefully navigate these complex trade issues to avoid falling victim. Trump's trade war is intensifying, and India's economic position is at risk. While India has not yet faced US tariffs, concerns are growing that India could be targeted, particularly given its trade surplus with the US. With the US pushing for greater market access and demanding changes to India's trade policies, tensions between the two countries are rising. India's growing role as a global economic player could put it in the crosshairs of US protectionism, threatening its booming trade relations and future growth prospects. In an effort to address these concerns, India has made several policy adjustments, including the removal of tariffs on goods in the Indian budget. This move is seen as a signal to the US and other global trading partners, demonstrating India's willingness to adapt to shifting trade dynamics. However, it remains unclear whether these actions will be enough to appease the US. India must now carefully navigate these complex trade issues to avoid. The world is
witnessing the onset of a new global trade war, triggered by United States President Donald Trump's imposition of 10% tariffs on imports from China, Canada, and Mexico. These tariffs have set off a series of retaliatory actions from the affected countries, creating uncertainty in international trade relations. Trump's bold move, signaling a tough stance against perceived trade imbalances, also extends to the European Union, which he threatened with similar tariffs, further escalating tensions on the global stage.
President will be implementing tomorrow 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China. I think Justin Trudeau would be wise to talk to President Trump directly before pushing outlandish comments like that to the media.
Canada's much-feared nightmare is soon to become a reality, stated the White House on January 31st. Addressing the media, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that United States President Donald Trump would be imposing a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into his country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans.
The President will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the President.
However, Caroline Leavitt could not confirm whether an exemption would be made on the oil imports.
Yesterday said that last night he was planning to discuss whether an exemption would be made on oil imports. Do you have any information on what decision he made there, or will there be exemptions at all offered under this?
I don't have an update or readout for you on the exemptions, but those tariffs will be for public consumption in about 24 hours tomorrow, so you can read them then.
The developments came just after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Friday dared the United States of an immediate and forceful response if the POTUS goes ahead with his threat to impose tariffs. He also cautioned his countrymen that they could be facing tough times amid the developments to follow. In a televised remark, the helpless Canadian Prime Minister said, "We're ready with a response, a purposeful, forceful but reasonable, immediate response. It's not what we want, but if he moves forward, we will also act," adding that all options were on the table. Reacting to the same, Caroline Leavitt issued a direct warning to Justin Trudeau over his outlandish comments, saying the Canadian Prime Minister would be wise to talk to Trump directly.
Canada, Mexico, and China, which, as I mentioned, President Trump will implement a 10% tariff on China, have all enabled illegal drugs to pour into America. The amount of fentanyl that has been seized at the southern border in the last 2 years alone has the potential to kill tens of millions of Americans. And so the president is intent on doing this, and I think Justin Trudeau would be wise to talk to President Trump directly before pushing outlandish comments like that to the media.
Mexico has also earlier struck conciliatory tones in response to Trump's February 1st deadline. President Claudia Sheinbaum said that she would emphasize Mexico's sovereignty and independence and would respond to the United States' actions step by step. Showing willingness to maintain communication with the U.S. to properly handle differences and expand mutually beneficial cooperation, China sought to promote stable and sustainable ties with America, the Foreign Ministry said on January 29th. It is noteworthy that Canada, Mexico, and China are America's three largest trading partners, with Ottawa sending 75% of all its goods and services exports to the United States, and the economy would be badly hit by Trump's promised tariffs.
As President Trump intensifies his trade war strategy, India's position becomes increasingly precarious. While the United States has yet to impose tariffs on Indian goods, the looming possibility has many business leaders and policymakers in India on edge. There is growing concern that the United States may soon target India, particularly given the country's trade surplus with the US and ongoing tensions over market access and tariffs.
Have never been good to us on trade. Tariffs don't cause inflation, they cause success.
United States President Donald Trump on February 1st ordered sweeping tariffs on goods from Mexico, Canada, and China, demanding they stanch the flow of fentanyl and illegal immigrants in the case of Canada and Mexico into the United States, kicking off a trade war that could dent global growth and reignite inflation. In 3 executive orders, Trump imposed 25% tariffs on Mexican and most Canadian imports and 10% on goods from China, starting on February 4th. He vowed to keep the duties in place until what he described as a national emergency over fentanyl, a deadly opioid, and illegal immigration to the U.S. ends. Mexico and Canada, the top 2 U.S. trading partners, immediately vowed retaliatory tariffs, while China said it would challenge Trump's move at the World Trade Organization and take other countermeasures. Meanwhile, Donald Trump's key quotes about tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China are making rounds on the internet as the trade war begins.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
When do you think you would enact those?
I think February 1st.
Are you planning on keeping notice of that?
I think we'll do it February 1st.
25% on both, sir.
On each. We're thinking about that too. We're talking about a tariff of 10% on China based on the fact that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada. One thing we're going to be demanding is we're going to be demanding respect from other nations. Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. And if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you, et cetera, et cetera. But Canada has been very tough to deal with over the years. And it's not fair that we should have a $200 billion or $250 billion deficit. We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody. We'll be announcing the tariffs on Canada and Mexico for a number of reasons. Number one is the people that have poured into our country so horribly and so much. Number two are the drugs, fentanyl, and everything else that have come into the country. And number three are the massive subsidies that we're giving to Canada and to Mexico in the form of deficits. And I'll be putting the tariff of 25% on Canada and separately 25% on Mexico. And we will really have to do that because we have very big deficits with those countries. Those tariffs may or may not rise with time.
Will oil be part of that, though? Because we get oil from Canada.
Oil is going to have nothing to do with it as far as I'm concerned. Oil has nothing to do with it. Look, Mexico and Canada have never been good to us on trade. They've treated us very unfairly on trade. And we will be able to make that up very quickly because we don't need the products that they have. We have all the oil you need. We have all the trees you need, meaning the lumber. We have more than almost anybody in those two categories. In oil, we have more than anybody, and we don't need anybody's trees. We have to free up some of the tree areas that we have. We have great lumber in this country. We have to free them up environmentally, which I can do very quickly. But we don't need what they have. And for us to be subsidizing Canada to the tune of $175 billion a year and subsidizing Mexico to the tune of $250 billion, $300 billion a year, and Mexico is a method of China sending in its product. And with China, I'm also thinking about something because they're sending fentanyl into our country, and because of that, they're causing us hundreds of thousands of deaths. So China is going to end up paying a tariff also for that, and we're in the process of doing that. Tariffs don't cause inflation, they cause success. Cause big success. So we're going to have great success. There could be some temporary short-term disruption, and people will understand that. I had that when I negotiated some of the good deals for the farmers, and unfortunately those deals have been led astray by Biden and his people because they didn't enforce the deal. But the tariffs are going to make us very rich and very strong, and we're going to treat other countries very fairly. But if you think about it, other countries charge us. Look, Mexico and Canada.
Countries like China, Mexico, and Canada have retaliated with their own set of countermeasures. Mexico, for instance, has raised tariffs on US goods by 25%, while Canadian leaders have called for tariff on products linked to Trump's allies, such as Tesla. These retaliatory actions are a reflection of the global ripple effect caused by Trump's protectionist approach, with countries preparing to defend their economies against US-imposed trade barriers.
Well, it could happen. If they do anything, we will. Canada's been very abusive of the United States for many years. They don't allow our banks. Did you know that? Canada does not allow banks to go in. If you think about it, that's pretty amazing. If we have a U.S. bank, they don't allow them to go in. Canada's been very tough on oil, on energy. They don't allow our farm products in, essentially. They don't allow a lot of things in, and we allow everything to come in. It's been a one-way street. We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what? What do we get out of it? We don't get anything out of it. I love the people of Canada. I disagree with the leadership of Canada. And something's going to happen there. But if they want to play the game, I don't mind. We can play the game all they want. Mexico, we've had very good talks with them. And this is retaliatory. This is retaliatory to a certain extent. Millions of people flowed into our country through Mexico and Canada, and we're not going to allow that. Well, we're going to see what happens. It'll happen, but we're going to, we'll see how things work out. It might happen with them, but it will definitely happen with the European Union. I can tell you that, because they've really taken advantage of us. And you know, we have over a $300 billion deficit. They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing. And we take everything from them, millions of cars, tremendous amounts of food and farm products. So the UK is way out of line, and we'll see the UK, but European Union is really out of line. UK is out of line, but I'm sure that one, I think that one can be worked out. But the European Union is, it's an atrocity, what they've done. Well, Prime Minister Starmer has been very nice. We've had a couple of meetings. We've had numerous phone calls. We're getting along very well. And we'll see whether or not we can balance out our budget. With the European Union, it's $350 billion deficit. So obviously something's going to take place there. I wouldn't say there's a timeline, but it's going to be pretty soon. No, I'm not concerned. We may have short-term some little pain, and people understand that, but long-term, the United States has been ripped off by virtually every country in the world. We have deficits with almost every country, not every country, but almost. And we're going to change it. It's been unfair. That's why we owe $36 trillion. We have deficits with everybody. We help everybody. We've been helping everybody for years. And to be honest, I don't think they appreciate it. So we're going to change that. We're going to change it fast. We're going to make America great again. We have to focus. I'm speaking with Prime Minister Trudeau tomorrow morning, and I'm also speaking with Mexico tomorrow morning. And I don't expect anything very dramatic. We put tariffs on. They owe us a lot of money, and I'm sure they're going to pay. That have to balance out their trade, number one. They've got to stop people from pouring into our country, and we've stopped it. They haven't stopped it. We've stopped it. They have to stop people from pouring in, and we have to stop fentanyl, and that includes China. Fentanyl has killed, this year, at least 200,000 people. It's pouring in from China through Mexico and Canada, and they've got to stop it. And if they don't stop it, the tariffs are going to get worse, a lot worse.
Mr. President, you're going to the border.
The escalating trade war is not only affecting direct parties but also reverberating through the global economy. British Columbia Premier David Eby threatened to halt the purchase of American liquor, symbolizing the broader disconnect with United States policies. Meanwhile, unions in Mexico have warned that the new tariffs could lead to significant job losses in industries like automotive manufacturing, further underscoring the risk of a global economic downturn.
Was just with the president in the Oval Office, and I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, said today that if the U.S. imposes tariffs, he will respond and he will not relent until the tariffs are removed. Are we seeing the start of a trade war with Canada?
I don't think so. I think the president is going to implement those tariffs tomorrow, and he will respond to Mr. Trudeau's comments in due time, I am sure.
What type of things have to happen? What does the administration need to see in order to avoid those tariffs?
Well, the tariffs are incoming tomorrow on Canada, and the reason for that is because both Canada and Mexico have allowed an unprecedented invasion of illegal fentanyl that is killing American citizens and also illegal immigrants into our country. In fact, I have more language for you right here. Canada, Mexico, and China, which, as I mentioned, President Trump will implement a 10% tariff on China, have all enabled illegal drugs to pour into America. The amount of fentanyl that has been seized at the southern border in the last 2 years alone has the potential to kill tens of millions of Americans. And so the president is intent on doing this, and I think Justin Trudeau would be wise to talk to President Trump directly before pushing outlandish comments like that to the media. Well, the president is intent on ensuring that we are increasing staffing at these agencies, and that's why he signed a very strong executive order on his second day in office, immediately terminating DEI hiring practices at the FAA. He also, following the tragic crash, as you all know, in the Oval Office yesterday, signed a memorandum directing an immediate assessment of the FAA to ensure the federal government is maintaining the highest personnel and aviation safety standards. And I would also just say there's a cultural piece to this as well. If you are an American who has spent many years studying aviation and you graduate from school and you're an air traffic controller based on skill and merit, and then you apply for a job and you're forced to fill out a biographical questionnaire asking you the color of your skin and asking you where you're from in details that aren't relevant at all to the job description, I think that deteriorates the morale of people in this industry. And if you talk to people in this industry, they'll tell you that. In fact, many of them filed a lawsuit against the FAA a couple of years ago under Joe Biden's administration because they were denied positions because of this DEI hiring practice that was putting identity politics over merit and skills. That's unacceptable. And I think just to put a fine point on this, because this is the third or fourth question I've answered on this subject, when you are flying on an airplane with your loved ones, which every one of us in this room has, do you pray that your plane lands safely and gets you to your destination, or do you pray that the pilot has a certain skin color? I think we all know the answer to that question, and as President Trump said yesterday, it's common sense. The president has made it very clear that this is a common sense solution to solving some of the problems that we have seen at the Federal Aviation Administration, and also when it comes to many of the federal agencies across our government. People should not be hired based on their disabilities, based on their skin color, their gender, their race. None of that matters. What matters to this president and this administration is how well you can do your job, and the American people agree with that sentiment. So it's about competence, skill, and merit. And so the president is focused on ensuring that the most competent individuals, the best and the brightest in this country, are in positions in this federal government, especially when it comes to public safety. Can't overemphasize the importance of those jobs.
In recent days, the CIA actually revealed that they do also believe that COVID-19 was from a lab leak in Wuhan, China.
I was just with the president.
Conflict is expected to widen as other nations consider their position in the unfolding trade war. The United Kingdom, for example, has expressed a desire for a strong trade relationship with the United States, with Prime Minister Keir Starmer emphasizing the importance of negotiations. Despite this, the uncertainty surrounding Trump's policies leaves many countries unsure about how to navigate the volatile global landscape, making it difficult to predict the future of international trade.
Trump's trade war is intensifying, and India's economic position is at risk. While India has not yet faced US tariffs, concerns are growing that India could be targeted, particularly given its trade surplus with the US. With the US pushing for greater market access and demanding changes to India's trade policies, tensions between the two countries are rising. India's growing role as a global economic player could put it in the crosshairs of US protectionism, threatening its booming trade relations and future growth prospects. In an effort to address these concerns, India has made several policy adjustments, including the removal of tariffs on goods in the Indian budget. This move is seen as a signal to the US and other global trading partners, demonstrating India's willingness to adapt to shifting trade dynamics. However, it remains unclear whether these actions will be enough to appease the US. India must now carefully navigate these complex trade issues to avoid falling victim. The world is witnessing the onset of a global trade war, sparked by US President Donald Trump's decision to impose 10% tariffs on imports from China, Canada, and Mexico. These tariffs have led to retaliatory actions from the affected countries, creating uncertainty in trade relations. Trump's tough stance against perceived trade imbalances has not only targeted these nations but also extended to the European Union, with similar tariff threats. The escalating tensions have sent shockwaves through global markets, and nations are scrambling to respond. The world is witnessing the onset of a global trade war, sparked by US President Donald Trump's decision to impose 10% tariffs on imports from China, Canada, and Mexico. These tariffs have set off a series of retaliatory actions from the affected countries, creating uncertainty in international trade relations. Trump's aggressive trade policies have also targeted the European Union, further escalating tensions on the global storm. Trump's trade war is intensifying, and India's economic position is at risk. While India has not yet faced US tariffs, concerns are growing that India could be targeted, particularly given its trade surplus with the US. With the US pushing for greater market access and demanding changes to India's trade policies, tensions between the two countries are rising. India's growing role as a global economic player could put it in the crosshairs of US protectionism, threatening its booming trade relations and future growth prospects. In an effort to address these concerns, India has made several policy adjustments, including the removal of tariffs on goods in the Indian budget. This move is seen as a signal to the US and other global trading partners, demonstrating India's willingness to adapt to shifting trade dynamics. However, it remains unclear whether these actions will be enough to appease the US. India must now carefully navigate these complex trade issues to avoid falling victim. Trump's trade war is intensifying, and India's economic position is at risk. While India has not yet faced US tariffs, concerns are growing that India could be targeted, particularly given its trade surplus with the US. With the US pushing for greater market access and demanding changes to India's trade policies, tensions between the two countries are rising. India's growing role as a global economic player could put it in the crosshairs of US protectionism, threatening its booming trade relations and future growth prospects. Trump's trade.
And that wraps up our tonight's discussion on the looming trade war and India's position in this rapidly evolving global crisis. As we have seen, the road ahead is uncertain, and the impact of these trade tensions could be far-reaching. Will India manage to navigate this storm, or will the United States intensify its stance? Only time will tell. We will keep an eye on this developing and story in the coming weeks. Thank you for joining us tonight on Global Perspectives. I'm Idris, and we'll see you next time with more analysis on the world's most pressing issues. Good night.